This video is being brought to you by Cutting Edge Gamer. If you upgrade graphics cards often, Cutting Edge Gamer is the perfect option for you. Lease the newest graphics cards on the market, such as Nvidia's RTX 20 series, for a low monthly payment. Click the affiliate link below in the description to find out more.
So more than likely, probably definitely by the time you've seen this video, iTunes will be no more. It's the end of an era. I wasn't a huge fan of the software, but it definitely ushered in the digital age of music, and in a weird way, it's sad to see it go. Let's discuss it. Skip it up and that up. Now, I remember way back in the day, probably before some of you were born. I can't believe it's 2019 and people born in like the year 2002 or 17 or 18 years old or you're young adults. I'm old as shit. But anyway, that's besides the point. Before iTunes, I remember using a piece of software called Napster. I was a freshman in college, and I remember using dial-up, downloading Raekwon's Immobilarity album. Yes, back 21 years ago now, I pirated an album. And Napster at the time was exciting. You had a way to just basically any song you could think of, type it into Napster and you could find it. You want an album, type it into Napster, you could find it. Now, if you had dial-up like me back then, which most people did, it could take you a while, but due to MP3s being so small, it still was relatively easy and quick to just get the music that you want. But here was the problem with it. It wasn't legal, and then there was LimeWire and other pieces of software that you use to peer-to-peer software that you got these MP3s from. And it was the Wild West, and the music industry lost its mind. If you remember, they were like suing parents for like hundreds of thousands of dollars because their 6-year-old would go on LimeWire and download music. I'm just making an as-if scenario, but things like that really happened. There's tons of examples out there. If you look up back in the early 2000s, how the RIAA was on a witch hunt to any kid who pirated music, their parents would have a huge bill thrown out their doorstep and they would have to go to court. But iTunes, initially, when they first came out with the iPod, were just an interface to the iPod. It was a way for you to rip your own CDs and make them into compressed audio files and put them onto the first iPod was only for interfaced with Mac computers, and it was FireWire. And that was in January 9th, 2001 that Steve Jobs revealed iTunes. And then in April 28th, 2003, he actually revealed the iTunes Store, where you could go there and buy songs a la carte. And it changed the music industry. What was interesting back then, which kind of ended up being iTunes' demise now, because more than likely Tim Cook is going to announce tomorrow they're getting rid of iTunes. They're going to have platforms for music, movies, and podcasts, however they're going to handle it, but iTunes is going to go away. But what was interesting was back when Steve Jobs in 2003 announced the iTunes Store, he kind of made fun of the subscription services, which ended up being the demise of iTunes now. But he's like, look, you could buy whatever songs you want to, and you don't have to pay a monthly fee. But in the end, it's those monthly fee services like Spotify and Apple Music itself, which ended up being the reason why iTunes Music Store is now antiquated. Really, in the end, what ended up happening to iTunes and the reason why Apple is moving away from it is they want to move on to being a service company. Everyone wants to be a service company now. Even game console companies like Microsoft, well, Microsoft is more, they're a software company too, but you get my point. Sony, they're looking to become services too, because the money is in recurring monthly subscription fees. Apple wants monthly subscription services too, where it's a recurring revenue stream. Okay, then right now, even though they're far away from Spotify has 100 million subscribed users and Apple has 56 million subscribed users. They want to get in on that revenue. They see that hardware like the iPhone can't hold them up forever, and that's why they're starting things like Apple Arcade, Apple News Plus, Apple Music, which they started in 2015. That was really the beginning, the first nail in the coffin of iTunes. And what's funny is the thing that where Steve Jobs brought out what was a strength of iTunes, where you could buy your music, like I said before, ended up being its demise. And what I think happened was, back when he was talking about subscription services like Rhapsody and kind of throwing shade at them, there wasn't streaming devices like your smartphone. So it wasn't having these streaming, oh great, I get to be on my laptop and stream music for my monthly subscription fee. Now having Spotify on your phone and having the musical world at your fingertips, as long as you have a LTE 4G connection, is the way to go. Like, why would you want to keep on buying each album for $10 when you could have every album for $9.99 a month from Spotify or Apple Music? Apple Music is the same price. And because the technology changed, the strength of iTunes ended up being its weakness, because it's no longer practical to just keep buying album after album after album when you could just play all those albums and stream them anywhere you go for one low monthly subscription fee. And, I guess in the end, if you are for countless years, if you're subscribed to the Spotify, the cost can add up, but it's still hell of a lot cheaper than, think about it, if you buy 100 albums and they're $10 each, that's $1,000. Spotify is a little less than $120 a year. And if you listen to a ton of music, it ends up being more cost effective to be subscribed to something like Spotify or Apple Music than it is to just continuously buy albums. That can become very expensive over time. Another interesting side effect, and this isn't the resurgence of physical media, but it shows that if people are going to purchase an album, they rather purchase something physically. And if they're not going to purchase something physically, they rather just be subscribed to a streaming service, is that there's been a resurgence in vinyl. In 2018, there was 18.6 million vinyl records sold. Okay, in 2006, I'm looking at the numbers right now, there weren't even a million records. It was 0.9 million vinyl records sold. So now, again, that isn't saying, oh, Rich, physical media is coming back. It's not dying. But what it's saying is that people are like, look, if I'm going to buy, let's pretend this Turbo Everdrive boxes, if I'm going to buy an album, I don't want to just buy ones and zeros on iTunes. I want to buy something physical. Okay. And if I'm not going to buy something physical, I'm just going to keep on listening to my music on Spotify. That's what I think is happening there. And it's so crazy. I never thought you go into Target now and they have a Bluetooth record player that you could sync it up to Bluetooth speakers. It's crazy, man. I actually a while back had a turntable that was portable, only a few years ago, runs on AA batteries, and it had Bluetooth and an FM transmitter. My point being is that streaming services and digital distribution is still the future, but what people are saying is, if I want physical, damn it, if I want to buy something, I'm buying it where I can hold it, I can touch it, I can put it on a turntable or a record player and play it, or buy the actual CD, even though it's still kind of tough to find CDs, but buy some physical media that I can hold on to. And if I can't, I'm going to Apple Music or Spotify. Now, if you want more proof that iTunes is going away, on Instagram right now, all their posts are gone. It says there's no post here yet. Now, what's interesting too is if you go to the iTunes Twitter account, the last time they posted something directly from the iTunes Twitter account was on May 21st, which for a major corporation like Apple is quite a while. They retweeted a couple things after, I'm seeing, from Apple TV, but it's been kind of quiet on the iTunes Twitter account as well. So yeah, something's definitely going on. And probably by the time you see this video, iTunes will be no more, or I'm sure they'll have a winding down period before they actually completely kill off iTunes. And if by the time you see this video, Tim Cook announces that iTunes is no more, it's just a sign of the times. Everything's becoming subscription services, movies, music, TV, video games, you name it. They want us to constantly be giving them money with recurring subscription fees than have us just buy things a la carte. And there's some benefits to us, but there's a lot of benefits to corporations too. That means that their hand will be in our pockets month after month, year after year, and it's a guaranteed way to profit off of us. Like I said, there's conveniences for us too, but technology's changing, and Apple sees it, and that's why iTunes is going to be irrelevant very soon. This is Rich at Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.